Hello there, little masters, and welcome to the new weekly Prancing Pony podcast, where tonight the good stuff is going to make you hoot twice like a barn owl and once like a screech owl.
West Uhowl, my friends. I'm Sean Marchese, the real-life Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the man of the West, the William to my Bert. I didn't know you could cook, Alan. Alan Sisto.
Thank you, Sean. I can grill just about anything, and yes, I even have a rotisserie.
Ooh, that's fancy.
Folks, this is going to be a fun one. Dwarvish contracts, burra hobbits, and culinary arguments amongst the uncivilized.
And you don't even mean just us. Not to mention talking purses. But first, it's time for a Tolkien Fun Fact.
That's right. Today's fun fact comes to us, as so many others have, from Carpenter's biography. There we learn that as his boys grew older, Tolkien would tell them stories. Big surprise, right?
No, shocking.
I mean, it's just color me stunned. But these stories that he invented in the family's early days at Northmoor Road, where they moved in 1926, were, it turns out, just a little different from some of the stories we've heard. Carpenter tells us that the tales were about this irrepressible villain, Bill Stickers, a huge hulk of a man who always got away with everything. Well, it turns out his name was taken from a notice on an Oxford gate that said, "Bill Stickers will be prosecuted." And get this, the name of the Dudley Do-Right character who was always chasing after Stickers, his name was inspired by a similar source. It was Major Rodahead.
Wow.
Yeah, wow, indeed.
Bill Stickers will be prosecuted. That's great. And you thought we were bad with puns.
I know, seriously.
Yeah, Bill Stickers, Major Rodahead. Probably not in the next Peter Jackson film.
No. Not when you can have Alfred.
No, yeah, right, exactly. Well, thank you for that one, Alan. That was our Tolkien Fun Fact for today.
Yes, it was.
But we've got a full chapter ahead, so why don't we go ahead and get to it? Alan?
I agree. We sure do. One word of warning, I love reading the trolls, so we've picked some longish passages. We hope you don't mind.
Oh, we all can't wait for it. Let's do it.
It's going to be fun. Let's go ahead and start out at the beginning, because as we've noted so many times before, it's a very good place to start. Bilbo wakes up. Sorry.
I was going to say it never gets old, but actually it might.
It does.
It might be starting to get old.
It does get old, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does.
That's the fun thing about it. It's like, again, it's like a bad Saturday Night
Live
sketch.
It's a dad joke. It's such a dad joke.
It is. It is a very dad joke.
Well, we're dads. What are we going to do?
We are. So Bilbo wakes up, and immediately we get this internal debate again, the Took Baggins. So let me go ahead and read from the middle of the first paragraph on a little bit, and we'll see some of that debate.
Okay.
The washing up was so dismally real that Bilbo was forced to believe the party of the night before had not been part of his bad dreams, as he had rather hoped. Indeed, he was really relieved, after all, to think that they had all gone without him, and without bothering to wake him up. But with never a thank you, he thought. And yet, in a way, he could not help feeling just a trifle disappointed. The feeling surprised him. "Don't be a fool, Bilbo Baggins," he said to himself. "Thinking of dragons and all that outlandish nonsense at your age." So he put on an apron, lit fires, boiled water, and washed up. Then he had a nice little breakfast in the kitchen before turning out the dining room. By that time, the sun was shining, and the front door was open, letting in a warm spring breeze. Bilbo began to whistle loudly and to forget about the night before. In fact, he was just sitting down to a nice little second breakfast in the dining room by the open window when in walked Gandalf.
What a morning to wake up to, huh?
Yeah, and what a vision that is. I mean,
you wake up thinking, just thinking for a moment, maybe it was all just a dream, and then all these dirty dishes.
Yeah, a huge pile in the kitchen, like just stacks and stacks and stacks. And I love this conflict, though. I mean, immediately you've got, he wanted it to be part of his dreams. He was really relieved that they'd gone and that they didn't even wake him up. He's like, oh, thank goodness, dodged a bullet. But he was feeling disappointed. Mm-hmm. Well, that's strange. In fact, it's so strange it surprises him himself.
That is true, yeah. Yeah, because that's an interesting catch because, one thing that I notice is how much the Baggins wins out, with...
totally wins
not
out.
only his relief, just the general relief, but noticing that they never said thank you. which is a very
the
Baggins-ish
propriety
thing to think about. But you're right. There's a bit of that tookishness too. He's a little surprised by his own disappointment that they're gone.
It's like, wait a minute, why am I disappointed?
Yeah.
I can't possibly be disappointed. And then very Bagginsy, he puts on his apron, lights the fires, boils the water, he gets all domestic on us again.
Yeah. Exactly. Turn out the kitchen.
And I love this. He literally began to forget about the night before.
Yeah.
Forgot about it.
Yeah.
Just forgot about it. I mean, really? You had all these dwarves in your house up until the middle of the night. You were hardly able to sleep because you kept hearing Thorin singing in the next room. But you've forgotten about it.
Maybe not truly, but he's moving on with his life.
He'd begun to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's
exactly.
He's getting to a point where it's like, okay, well, I can get back into my routine. I'm glad that's over.
Yeah. No, that little adventure is over. But of course, Gandalf arrives, and
we've got to point out that he's sitting down to a nice little second breakfast.
Yeah.
Definitely a well-earned comfort.
A well-earned comfort, yes. Sitting on the field of the spoils of battle.
Exactly.
So Gandalf arrives and immediately, what is going on? Why aren't you with us? What was this about the early start?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the other anachronism. Gandalf says, "Great elephants."
Breakfast, or whatever you call it, at 10:30.
Yeah, which 10:30, I think most people call that an early lunch.
Yeah. Or brunch.
At
least
there are days
where
I'm like, thank goodness somebody's serving lunch at 10:30, because if my day job, there are times where I'm up at 4:30 in the morning because I need to be,
oh my goodness,
on some remote location at sunrise at 6:15 or something.
Oh my.
Architectural photography. If I got to be,
that's true. You need to get a sunrise shot.
If I need a sunrise shot because the important face faces east, then that's what I got to do.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'm trying to find lunch at 10:30. Here's Bilbo having his second breakfast instead. But great elephants. Love that little anachronism.
That is great.
And it is really, he has a mantelpiece and he dusts it every day. Is that what Gandalf knows about Bilbo? A little bit odd for that.
He's a creature of such habit that he dusts the mantelpiece every day.
Gandalf, who hadn't stopped by in years, knew.
Oh, that's a good point.
The mantelpiece on a daily basis.
Gandalf's been watching him.
Oh goodness! But
you have to wonder if Gandalf's been watching.
You do have to wonder. Yeah, I agree. But there's a fancy little note that arrives. Do you want to tell us what was on that note?
I would love to read
Bilbo
that note.
missed. Yeah.
All right. Thorin and company to Burglar Bilbo greeting. For your hospitality, our sincerest thanks, and for your offer of professional assistance, our grateful acceptance. Terms: cash on delivery, up to and not exceeding 1/14 of total profits, if any. All traveling expenses guaranteed in any event. Funeral expenses to be defrayed by us or our representatives if occasion arises and the matter is not otherwise arranged for. Thinking it unnecessary to disturb your esteemed repose, we have proceeded in advance to make requisite preparations, and shall await your respected person at the Green Dragon Inn, Bywater, at 11 a.m. sharp. Trusting that you will be punctual, we have the honor to remain, yours deeply, Thorin and Co.
Wow. I love this mock formality.
Oh, so yeah. They've really just turned, we talked about that at the end of chapter 1.
Yeah.
With, Bilbo's politeness and Thorin kind of mocking his politeness there. And they're really just doing that again. They've turned Bilbo's niceties on its ear.
Right back on himself.
Yeah, his obsession with these little minutia. It's very modern obsession, almost lawyerly obsession with minutia. They're really playing with that.
Yeah, I want to go back. I want to go back to that paragraph and just real quickly look at it. He goes, "I should like it all plain and clear," he said obstinately, putting on his business manner, usually reserved for people who try to borrow money off of him. And he said, I should like to know about risks, out-of-pocket expenses, time required, remuneration, and so forth. And so, of course, Thorin's note is like, well,
right.
If that's what you want, I'll give you
very detailed.
I'll give you a contract. And of course, I love he's absolutely trying to frighten Bilbo out of his socks when he
says, yeah, the funeral expenses to be defrayed. I love
if occasion arises and the matter's not otherwise arranged for, as if your body hasn't been burned up by a dragon,
hasn't been already digested or cremated by dragon fire,
or fallen off a cliff and is irretrievable.
Right.
I mean, if we still have your body, we'll do something with it.
Then we'll deal with it. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Too funny. And thinking it unnecessary to disturb your esteemed repose.
I wish my kids would think it unnecessary to disturb my esteemed repose.
Oh yeah, they won't do
Saturday
that.
Mornings.
They won't do that for probably ever.
Yeah, probably forever. You're right. I mean, when they're teenagers and they don't want to get up till 11 o'clock in the morning, the one day I want to get up is the one day, or the one day I want to sleep in is the one day they'll wake up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that. Unnecessary to disturb your esteemed repose. And it's just this obsequious language. It's this over the top.
Yeah.
And it's designed to kind of mock that propriety that that they see in Bilbo. This kind of laughable. You're so not ready for this. Not that they are, as we'll see, but
Yeah, and that is something that I know we're done talking about the movies, but that is something that you kind of lose in the movies because the dwarves come out with this contract.
Yeah, they make the dwarves out to be the ones who are interested
to be the officious ones as opposed to Bilbo. Yeah. Where it's a very Baggins thing to be, and the dwarves really
it is a very Bagginsy thing, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So that is a big difference, and though we won't often harp on those, it's certainly worth mentioning.
No, yeah.
So then Gandalf basically kicks him out the door, literally. We hear about that. If you're talking about that incident with the dragon, I barely gave your uncle a nudge out of the door. Really?
Yeah.
You just dragged his butt
That's
out
quite
the
a
door.
nudge. That's a
That's a nudge. Nudge, wink,
I love
wink.
this. I love the second. That no time for that either.
Yeah. No time. Doesn't even know what it is. No time.
He just
for that
says
either.
"but"
Off
and no
you
time
go.
for that either. So great.
He just shoves him out the door in a hurry. So let's find out exactly to what extent. To the end of his days, Bilbo could never remember how he found himself outside, without a hat, a walking stick, or any money, or anything that he usually took when he went out, leaving his second breakfast half-finished and quite unwashed up, pushing his keys into Gandalf's hands and running as fast as his furry feet could carry him down the lane, past the great mill, across the water, and then on for a mile or more. My goodness. I'm going to skip a big chunk here and then finish this up.
Okay.
That's how they all came to start, jogging off from the inn one fine morning just before May on laden ponies. And Bilbo was wearing a dark green hood, a little weather-stained, and a dark green cloak borrowed from Dwalin. They were too large for him, and he looked rather comic. What his father Bungo would have thought of him, I daren't think. His only comfort was he couldn't be mistaken for a dwarf, as he had no beard. So, I skipped some, and we'll go back to what we skipped over, but I thought those two tied together. Yeah, it was just some dialogue, but I really wanted to make sure we got that last little bit in because there's some very important little bits there that we'll touch on shortly.
Yeah.
We'll get back to the beginning of that. Isn't this interesting? We talk about the Took and Baggins side, but here this is no side. This is Gandalf deciding.
This is true. Yeah, that's true. He's pushed out the door. He's not making this decision on his own. This is
not the Took side saying, I'm ready for an adventure.
Yeah.
This is not him waving the contract going, I'm off on an adventure.
Right.
No, he's not excited about this.
That's true. Yeah.
He's like,
that's true.
Whoa.
He doesn't know. He suddenly realized he doesn't know how he got outside. And
literally.
To the end of his days, he never remembers how. He just knows that he did.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just absolutely stunning to him.
Gandalf used an old Jedi mind trick on him, I guess. I don't know.
Exactly. This is the adventure you're waiting for.
These are the dwarves you're looking for.
Don't try your Jedi mind tricks on me.
Oh, man. Phantom Menace reference. Wow. Watto.
I couldn't remember his name. Thank you.
Definitely there.
I'm so sorry.
Way too much prequel knowledge. I should not
have
prequel knowledge.
Nobody should, or at least just not admit to prequel knowledge. I'm sure there's like a rehab for that.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, it's called watching episodes 4 through 6 repeatedly.
Exactly, yeah.
So anyway, we digress. It's like 14 minutes in and we already had another digression.
That's all right. Last Jedi tickets went on sale this week. We can have some fun.
That's right. That's right. I'd forgotten about that. That trailer hit the other day.
I haven't seen it.
I've not seen it yet either. I didn't have the time. It came out on Monday Night Football, and frankly, I've just been too busy.
I think I'm going to try not to watch it. I think I'm going to go inside unseen. I'm already going to go see the movie.
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course we'll see it. I mean, that's just without saying. Anyway,
we digress.
Anyway, indeed. Don't try. He's a voice I can do. Jar Jar Binks, on the other hand, not so much.
No,
and that's
let's
okay.
not even try.
So
let's not even try.
No, let's definitely not even try. So we get this wonderful dialogue. Balin's all like, bravo, good job, you're here on time. Wow, we didn't expect that. You can tell it's very sarcastic.
Do you think?
I
Do you
think
think it's
so.
sarcastic? If
I
it
think
were
it's a little
anybody
bit.
but if it were
That's
anybody
true.
but if it were anybody but Balin, I would say
Yeah,
it
maybe
was
you're right,
sarcastic.
because Balin does seem like the one guy who's not
Balin
so...
always has faith in Bilbo throughout this whole thing.
You're right, he
It's kind of
does.
heartwarming to me. It kind of tells
agree.
me, even from the beginning, that there's hope for Bilbo. He can be this hero that Gandalf wants him to be.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Dwalin, on the other hand, has...
Dwalin's like, well, you're gonna have to manage without pocket handkerchiefs.
Right, exactly. Don't be precise,
Yeah, exactly.
which is such great advice, because it's like you're out of that world. You don't have time. You don't
You're
have
not going to be
the
precise
luxury
anymore.
of precision anymore. Yeah,
You'll be lucky if you just happen to remember whether it's morning or afternoon.
right.
But this closing paragraph that I read is really, there's some key stuff in here. Obviously, the physical appearance, right? He's wearing the dark green hood and dark green cloak. They're too large. He looks comic. But this line, what his father Bungo would have thought of him, I daren't think. That's a big line right there.
That is a big line. Yeah.
This is all about that respect thing. You know, he feels like, remember that line? He may have lost the neighbor's respect, but, well, we'll see what he gained in the end.
We'll see if he gained anything in the end. Yeah.
This is him already starting to lose that respect.
Yeah.
And
of course, notably, it's his father that he thinks of.
Course,
it's the Baggins ancestor that he thinks of.
Exactly, the most comfortable,
Yeah, it's the Baggins side that he knows is would be ashamed of him.
What his father-in-law would have thought of him, probably pretty cool.
Yeah, might have actually, yeah.
Yeah. His only comfort, and I love
Or you mean
this.
his grandfather, his
grandfather-in-law. You're right. Yeah. But that his comfort. We talk about comfort, comfortable, uncomfortable. Here he finds a little comfort, but it's in the fact that he couldn't be mistaken for a dwarf.
I think that's a big line too. I think
It is.
He's his only comfort now is his identity. His identity is a hobbit. He may
that's
not have his
exactly
hobbit
right.
life anymore, but at least he's still a hobbit. He still looks like a hobbit.
And even though we'll see that he struggles with wanting to be a part and not being a part of the dwarves, there is this appreciation of his hobbit nature.
Yes, exactly.
And it is a comfort for him. It's the one thing he can hold on to, because now he knows all of his friends, all of his family, anybody who knows him, they've lost their respect for him because he's gone off on an adventure.
Yeah.
So he knows he doesn't have the dwarves' respect either. He's stuck in this very uncomfortable
alone.
middle.
He really is alone.
He really is. He is totally alone at this point.
And we'll see this a few times, starting maybe later in this chapter, definitely in the next chapter. We'll start to see him start to think of home and remember home. And
it'll be in this chapter. Yeah.
I thought it would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did read this recently, believe it or not.
We do, folks. We do try to actually read a chapter before we sit down. Sometime in the previous week or two.
Right. But
makes it sound like we don't prepare. I don't know. Do we want people to know we actually have to spend hours upon hours, like outlining and discussing and preparing, or do we want people to think we're just so brilliant we can wing it?
I think our preparation shows.
I hope so.
I think so.
Yeah, we're not that brilliant. We can't do this. Off the top of our,
we could not possibly.
Heads.
But yeah, no, I think when we see him thinking back to these comforts of home, it is really he's just kind of clinging to what's left of the Hobbit, within him. He's just holding on to that last little bit of his Hobbit identity.
Yeah, and he gets a little bit more of that in the next paragraph. We're not going to read it, but Gandalf comes along and saves him a little bit by bringing him some pocket handkerchiefs.
I like that.
Pipe and tobacco, and he's very happy at that point. They're telling stories and singing songs, and they didn't get quite as much food as he liked, but it wasn't so bad. But that was because, look at where they were. They were passing through Hobbit lands, which is described as a wide, respectable country inhabited by decent folks.
Yeah.
So, this is still homey for him. It's comfortable for him. It's familiar to him.
This is the adventure he wanted. He wanted to see places. He wanted to see the countryside. Just go for a long walk, basically.
Right. And hear stories and songs and things like that. I mean, how much fun is this? This is this is a road trip.
No peril.
Is totally cool.
He wanted no peril.
Yeah. But immediately, even before they get into peril, when they get into a place that's different, what do we find? That it's where people spoke strangely.
Yeah.
They sang songs that he'd never heard, and they'd gone on far into these other lands where there really were nothing. There was just these dreary hills. There were old castles. At this point, you can imagine they're probably going by Amansul.
I'm definitely.
That's what I'm thinking of when I think about the hill with the old castles with an evil look.
With an evil look, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Oh, I had it written down somewhere.
Did you?
All the places that they're passing by, yeah. Yeah, Weather Hills. They're going by the Weather Hills, and then...
Yep. So
yeah.
at the end of the Weather Hills is Amansul.
Oh, and I think they actually went by Hrudauer, one of the...
one of the old kingdoms.
One of the 3 kingdoms that was left after Arnor fell.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's what I have in my notes.
Well, and then Bilbo starts grumbling at that point, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
What does he have to say?
Yep. "To think it will soon be June," grumbled Bilbo, as he splashed along behind the others in a very muddy track. It was after tea time. It was pouring with rain, and had been all day. His hood was dripping into his eyes. His cloak was full of water. The pony was tired and stumbled on stones. The others were too grumpy to talk. "And I'm sure the rain has got into the dry clothes and into the food bags," thought Bilbo. "Bother burgling and everything to do with it. I wish I was at home in my nice hole by the fire, with the kettle just beginning to sing." It was not the last time that he wished that.
No, it wasn't.
Nope.
Not even close to the last. I love how we get the reference to what time of day it is. It's not early afternoon. It's not,
It's tea time.
mid-afternoon. It's after tea time. It's a reference to food.
After tea time, yep. It's a reference
and
to
to
what he's
propriety.
going without, this comfort, this
Exactly.
homey comfort he's going without.
The Hobbit culture. Yeah.
Yep.
And of course, I mean, this is truly miserable conditions. Let's be honest.
Oh, certainly.
I mean, even the others were too grumpy to talk, including Grumpy, who I understand was with them at this point.
Well, since it was raining, I imagine Sneezy was there too.
Probably. Yeah. Too bad Doc wasn't around.
No.
Yeah. I mean, this is a truly miserable place.
Yeah.
Pouring rain, and of course, his negative thoughts just keep on going. The rain's gotten into our dry clothes and our food.
Yeah, and he's just starting out. I mean,
I know. That's so early on the road.
That's the incredible thing. He's getting disheartened already. If he has no idea just
Really?
how rough this road is going to get.
This is just bad weather. Wait till it gets worse.
Right.
And worse it certainly will get. They find out shortly thereafter that Gandalf is gone, which is
Typical.
odd because he didn't say, "Excuse me, guys, I got to take off."
Typical
He
wizard
just is
just
gone.
disappearing when you need.
Yeah, I know. Such a pain. And then they can't light a fire. Apparently, the dwarves aren't very competent. It seems they're not really even that prepared. I mean, we'll see later in a little bit that when Thorin most needs a weapon, he has to grab a nearby stick. I don't know. Were they thinking they were going to be able to just go to the Lonely Mountain unarmed?
That's the question that runs throughout this entire book. Is they set out on this quest with no idea of how they're actually going to.
They're not any more ready than Bilbo.
No, they're not.
So
they really
many
are not.
ways.
They're not ready to fight a dragon. They're not ready to win the treasure. They're ready to get the treasure back, but they're not ready to win it.
Yeah, they're ready for Bilbo to steal it back.
Bilbo
but
to
they're
steal
not
it
ready
back,
to
and
win
that's
it.
obviously that's a question that he asked them. Like, what was I going to do? Take it out? Take it out in trips.
One hobbit load at a time. That's going to take a little while. This is really revelatory in terms
It really
of the
is
dwarves'
their lack
preparation.
of preparedness. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. We observed this with the beginning of chapter 1 that Keely and Feely were the only ones who brought any kind of tools or anything, and maybe that was because they were tasked with that, or maybe it's because they were the only ones who actually really had that much foresight.
It could be. Yeah, either way. I mean, either way, they're the only ones who seem to have any preparation. Everybody else is busy carrying their musical instruments, but not their weapons of war, apparently. But then it gets even worse.
I do like the observation that dwarves can make a fire almost anywhere out of almost anything.
Isn't that interesting? Wind or no wind?
Yeah.
But even the two that were best at it, Owen and Glowin, couldn't get it done.
Do it. I just think that's an interesting little detail about
It is.
dwarves, just because they're made by Owlay to be master smiths, so they should be good at getting a fire going because it's something that's
a very good point.
Really key to who they are.
Yeah.
I just think that's kind of
I
cool.
wonder how you'd represent that in D&D. Maybe all dwarves have the ability to create a fire. With minimal kindling or something.
Without a tinder box or something like that.
Right, they don't have the tinder box to make a fire or something. I don't know. All I know is they can see in caves, right? They get that night vision.
Yeah, the infravision.
Infravision, yeah. We digress.
We do.
Anyway, so then it does get worse. It really does. The pony gets into the water, and this is bad. I mean, they're obviously able to save the pony, which is nice, except that all the bags that were on this pony were gone. And it was almost all the food.
Yeah.
So there was just almost nothing left for supper and even less for breakfast.
Less for breakfast.
Which, of course, for Bilbo is just a disaster.
Yeah.
And now we even get that he sadly reflects that adventures are not all pony rides in May sunshine.
Yeah. This is the first kind of thing that kind of bursts his bubble, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Like, there are some harsh realities at work here.
Yeah, and of course he thinks they're so much further along than they are, as we'll find out later.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they do spot a light, and we're going to get very soon to the trolls, but before we do, we get to this stuff about, and we're not going to read all of this. That's why, I don't know, we just don't want to take 2 hours to do the episode, but he decides, they decide for him that he's going to go and look at the light and investigate the light. Mm-hmm. Now, this is done on the theory that anything is better than Little Supper. I'm not sure that they're going to continue to think that in a little while. I think
this is the last time that any of them is going to have that thought. That
probably
that anything
nothing worse than anything is better than Little Supper.
Right, exactly.
Really?
The worst thing I could possibly imagine is Little Supper. Oh, wait, actually being eaten by a troll? Okay, no.
Right up there. Yeah, that would be above that.
Imprisoned by elves, attacked by goblins. Yeah.
Yeah, there are plenty of things. Being chased up trees by wolves. Yeah.
Being chased up trees by wolves.
Yeah. Lots and lots of things that are a lot worse than just Little Supper.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
So they're going to want to rethink that. They soon will. I do love that they recognize, who's going to go do this? Oh, wait a minute. That's right. We've got a burglar.
We have a burglar.
You can hear Sean Bean now. They have a burglar.
They have a burglar.
So it's a cave burglar. Of course it is. And I love how the narrator has to draw the attention to who it is. Now it is the burglar's turn, they said, meaning Bilbo.
In case we've forgotten.
In case we, the reader, have forgotten.
Yeah.
And of course we've forgotten. Because he's not
because Bilbo is not at all a burglar.
No,
but what I love about this is, what you can see, you can actually see the camera cut to Bilbo, Yeah. Now it is the burglar's turn, and you can imagine them cutting to Bilbo with this just completely confused, like
who, what?
Like they don't mean me, do they? You can see that with this narration.
You really can.
Brilliant.
You really can. And he's given a task, and it's a very specific task. And I think this is important to discuss before we get to what happens next.
Specific doesn't even begin to cover some
very
of these instructions.
Specific. Well, yeah, I mean, the hooting is a little silly, but you must go and find out about the light, all about it, what it's for, and if all is perfectly safe and canny.
Yeah.
He's not supposed to do anything more than that. You're not supposed to pick any pockets.
You had one job, Bilbo.
You had one job. I've got one job on this ship.
It's stupid,
but I'm going to do it. But I'm going to do it. You'd think that, he would remember that. I mean, but coming up, we're going to see a very big Tukish moment. So
yes, we are, and the narrator kind of backs him up a little bit on it, which I love, which we'll get to.
Yeah, we will. I mean, we see that he has this pride in his ability to be stealthy. This is very Hobbity. This is the Hobbit nature, right? We saw this at the very beginning when the narrator says, "What is a Hobbit?" I guess that's something we need to explain these days. Mm-hmm. And one of them is that they can be very quiet. They can not be noticed if they don't want to be, and very, very quiet. So
yeah,
and
it's something they take pride in.
Of course. So he may not know how to hoot like an owl, but he does have confidence in his skills.
Who does? I mean, hoot twice like a barn owl and once like a screech owl. And we'll do what we can.
Yeah. It's not
you jump through all these hoops and maybe we'll help.
And maybe we'll show up. Maybe we won't.
Man.
Maybe we'll just start arranging your funeral expenses.
I mean, already they're asking so much of him.
They are. But yeah, you're right. Maybe they'll just pass the hat, Oh, Bilbo's dead. Pass the hat. Very, very interesting stuff. But we do get this stuff from the narrator about how we wouldn't have even noticed it at all. Bilbo, even a weasel, wouldn't have stirred a whisker at Bilbo walking by. He's that stealthy. So this is a very Tukish moment, that he does what he's about to do.
Yeah, it is. Although I have to say that only a Baggins would walk primly towards the red
light. You're right. I hadn't even noticed that, primly. That is hilarious.
Always this this push and pull between the Took and the Baggins sides. But
Indeed.
anyway.
Oh, man. Well, now gets one of the fun parts of my job. And that is going to be reading some of this.
I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, this is going to be a little fun. We're going to meet
I'm just going to sit
trolls.
back and just take this in from now on, for the next couple minutes here.
It's really just a short passage, remember, because we've got a bit for you, too. But so he gets up to the fire, and this is what he saw. 3 very large persons sitting around a very large fire of beech logs. They were toasting mutton on long spits of wood and licking the gravy off their fingers. There was a fine, toothsome smell. Also, there was a barrel of good drink at hand, and they were drinking out of jugs. But they were trolls. Obviously trolls. Even Bilbo, in spite of his sheltered life, could see that. From the great heavy faces of them, and their size, and the shape of their legs, not to mention their language, which was not drawing-room fashion at all, at all. Mutton yesterday, mutton today, and blimey if it don't look like mutton again tomorrow, said one of the trolls. Never a blinking bit of man-flesh have we had for long enough, said a second. What the hell William was thinking of to bring us into these parts? It all beats me. And the drink running short what's more, he said, jogging the elbow of William, who was taking a pull at his jug. William choked. Shut your mouth, he said as soon as he could. You can't expect folk to stop here forever just to be ate by you and Bert. You've a village and a half between you since we come down from the mountains. How much more do you want? Time's been up our way when you'd have said, thank you, Bill, for a nice fat valley mutton like what this is. He took a big bite off a sheep's leg he was roasting and wiped his lips on his sleeve. Yes, I am afraid trolls do behave like that, even those with only one head each.
Very well done.
Oh, those guys cracked me up,
Nicely done.
man.
The Alan Sisto
Tolkien...
troll voices finally come out on the Prancing Pony podcast. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for that.
Oh, well, I'm glad that I could live up to it a little bit.
It was very good.
It's a lot of fun. There's such a hoot.
It is so much fun. I've even had fun with these voices reading it to my kids. And yeah, you really get to inhabit these characters, and it's so much fun.
You do. They're so fun to do. And, you know,
and the narrator's,
it's part of that accessibility
assessment of them
again.
is so great, you know?
Isn't it brilliant?
Yeah.
I love it. The 2 lines in particular, of course, the not drawing room fashion at all.
Yep.
And then that line at the end, you're wondering when he says, I'm afraid trolls do behave like that. Is he talking about the fact that they've eaten a village and a half? Or is he merely talking about
fact that they wiped their lips on their sleeve? Right, exactly.
It's not the fact that he's, slaughtering an entire village to satisfy his hunger.
Right.
It's
not the eating, it's the bad table manners. and the poor diction. It's great. It's wonderful.
Oh, I know. Absolutely. The kind of the uneducated voices, and the poor language. I mean, I don't think in all of the legendarium, this might be as close as we get to swearing, is that one of the trolls says, what the hell William was a thinking of? I think that's probably as close as we get.
I think it is. Maybe, yeah, I think it might be.
We'll have to see. I don't remember
I'm
anything
trying to remember maybe
Silmarillion.
orcs in Lord of the Rings, but...
Maybe, yeah. It would certainly be an orc if it was. But
So
it is funny. I have to say, Corey Olsen had an observation that I wish I would have made, only because he writes them so brilliantly. He says that these trolls, they may be funny, but they are no joke. And he's right. These should be absolutely terrifying
creatures,
and yet here we are just guffawing.
Just laughing about how silly they are. They do seem silly.
Yeah. It's absolutely awesome stuff. But what happens?
Well, I love...
You've got more to say.
Well, I do, but before I get into that, I just want to say I love the fact that, we see that Bilbo recognizes that they're trolls. Even Bilbo, in spite of his sheltered life.
In spite of his sheltered life. Isn't that something?
Yeah, it's just a neat point to bring up that, these may be new to us, but, Bilbo
there must be some cultural awareness, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's the thing. He may not know precisely what a dragon is because they're legendary in these parts.
Right.
But he knows what a troll is, at least enough to recognize one.
Exactly, yeah. And maybe it's just the bad table manners that tips him off. But
well, yeah, not to mention their language, which is not drawing room fashion at all.
At all.
But that little addendum, that second at all,
that's
brilliant.
That's the icing.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
That's such a touch.
It's such a tut-tut, like he's shaking his head like it's not at all at
tisk
all.
tisk, you know?
Yeah.
it's just, for shame.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Great. It's great. It's another one of those things that, a narrator, would do in telling the story to children,
Yeah, exactly.
Using it to teach a lesson, like, these trolls speak like this, but you should not speak like this.
Yeah.
You should not do
And please
this.
don't eat a village and a half between you and your friend. But if you do, don't wipe your lips on your sleeve.
It's okay to eat the village. Just make sure you use a napkin.
Yeah. It takes a village to satisfy Bert. Oh, man. I
Remember to keep your Hobbit fork on the outside and your dwarf fork on the inside.
On the inside. That's right. Oh, goodness.
Anyway.
Well, so Bilbo, even though he's just seen these three trolls talking about eating a village and a half, what does he do?
All right.
What should he have done, I suppose?
What should he have done? And this is what I love. After hearing all this, Bilbo ought to have done something at once. Either he should have gone back quietly and warned his friends that there were 3 fair-sized trolls at hand in a nasty mood, quite likely to try roasted dwarf, or even pony, for a change. Or else he should have done a bit of good, quick burgling. A really first-class and legendary burglar would at this point have picked the troll's pockets. It is nearly always worthwhile if you could manage it. Pinched the very mutton off the spits, purloined the beer, and walked off without their noticing him. Others more practical, but with less professional pride, would perhaps have stuck a dagger into each of them before they observed it. Then the night could have been spent cheerily. Bilbo knew it. He had read of a good many things he had never seen or done. He was very much alarmed, as well as disgusted. He wished himself 100 miles away, and yet somehow he could not go straight back to Thorin and Company empty-handed. So he stood and hesitated in the shadows. Of the various burglarious proceedings he had heard of, picking the troll's pockets seemed the least difficult. So at last he crept behind a tree just behind William.
Oh, man. There's so much there.
Now's when your stomach is just like, oh, don't do it, don't do it,
no,
don't do it.
Don't. Yeah, this is the moment, like in the horror movie, when you're like, don't walk down that hallway.
Don't go
don't
in
do
there.
It. Don't
pick the pocket. Don't pick the pocket.
I love that. This is one of those things you only catch this when you read it out loud. Of the various burglarious proceedings.
Various burglarious. I love that. Yeah.
Isn't that just brilliant?
I know.
I'll absolutely love that.
Burglarious is such a great word, and to pair it with
and
various.
To rhyme it, various burglarious.
Various burglarious. Yep.
That should be the name of a band, the Various Burglarious Proceedings.
Ooh. If anybody out there is listening to this and decides to name their band the Various Burglarious Proceedings, please send us a copy of your first.
Please do.
Hit record. It's
goodness,
definitely just a very, very bad idea, but
it's a very bad. This is like ranking right up there with the worst ideas you can come up with. But this is another time where
what I love is I love that the narrator reminds us that a really good burglar would have done something like this.
Right.
And it reminds us how much Bilbo is not one.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're right when you said that this is a very Tookish moment. He could have Baggins'd out and gone back.
Have you noticed? It's when the Took side really came out strongly in the last chapter. It was when one of the others, and I don't recall now at the moment who it was. I want to say it was Glowin.
Who called him a grocer? More like a grocer than a burglar.
Saying basically he's more like a grocer than a burglar. Mm-hmm. And Bilbo was like, well, I am fired up now.
Right.
And we talked about, I think I drew the analogy with Marty McFly and somebody calling him chicken. That's the dare. That's what gets him fired up.
Yeah.
And here it's his own little, like internal voice that is saying, maybe calling him a chicken. But the whole idea is he now knows, somehow he could not go straight back to Thorin and Company empty-handed. This is like stupid pride.
You're supposed to be a burglar. Do something burglary. Do something burglarious.
Burglarious. But don't do exactly what Thorin told you, which is just go find out about it and come back and tell us if it's safe.
Which he's done, by the way. He's already found out what's going on.
Yeah.
He's got the intel. He just needs to go back,
All he needs to do is go back to Thorin and say, no.
Yeah.
No, it is not safe. And by the way, I can now think of a few things that are worse than Little Supper.
Right.
And there are 3 of them right in that in that wood. I mean, this is just...
But he didn't.
No, he didn't. And I love the different things that the burglars might have done. Sticking a dagger into each of them, that's very... Well, practical.
More
like you
practical,
said.
but with less professional pride.
Yeah,
Because that's
exactly.
arguably becoming more of an assassin than a burglar.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's using those, thief skills,
Right.
hide in
For
shadows
sure.
and
For sure,
backstab
yeah.
and
Yeah.
double damage and all that.
Yeah.
But I can't even imagine how skillful you'd have to be to pinch the mutton off the spits and purloin the beer.
To purloin the beer, which has got to be in a cask.
Yeah, probably twice as large as
To
Bilbo.
walk away with a cask of beer big enough for 3 trolls.
Seriously, I mean, the jugs they're drinking from are probably as big as Bilbo.
Right.
Oh, man, what a segment that
So
is.
funny.
And it's so easy in the midst of this awesome dialogue to kind of miss some of the really big things that are there. But that's a very important little bit that, he should have gone back. That is his job. Mm-hmm. But his pride tells him he can't go back empty-handed. So once again, pride. Oh, man.
Man, always a killer. Always a bad motivation in Tolkien's world.
Exactly. But now the trolls get to meet Bilbo.
Although, we know how this all ends up, and Bilbo has the luck to get through.
Oh,
it.
yeah. Yeah, luck. Luck trumps, in this case, the bad decision.
Yep.
Then Bilbo plucked up courage and put his little hand in William's enormous pocket. There was a purse in it, as big as a bag to Bilbo. Ha, thought he, warming to his new work as he lifted it carefully out. This is a beginning. It was. Trolls' purses are the mischief, and this was no exception. Yeah, who are you? It squeaked as it left the pocket, and William turned around at once and grabbed Bilbo by the neck before he could duck behind the tree. Blimey, Bert, look what I've caught, said William. What is it? Said the others, coming up. Lummy if I knows. What are you? Bilbo Baggins, a hobbit, said poor Bilbo, shaking all over and wondering how to make owl noises before they throttled him. A hobbit, said they, a bit startled. Trolls are slow in the uptake and mighty suspicious about anything new to them. What's a hobbit got to do with my pocket anyways? Said William. And can you cook 'em? Said Tom. You can try, said Bert, picking up a skewer. He wouldn't make above a mouthful, said William, who had already had a fine supper. Not when he was skinned and boned. Perhaps there are more like him round about, and we might make a pie, said Bert. Here, you. Are there any more of your sort a sneaking in these here woods, you nasty little rabbit? Said he, looking at the hobbit's furry feet, and he picked him up by the toes and shook him. Yes, lots, said Bilbo, before he remembered not to give his friends away. No, none at all, not one, he said immediately afterwards. What do you mean? Said Bert, holding him right way up, by the hair this time. What I say, said Bilbo, gasping. And please, don't cook me, kind sirs. I am a good cook myself, and cook better than I cook, if you see what I mean. I'll cook beautifully for you, a perfectly beautiful breakfast for you, if only you won't have me for supper.
Oh, man.
Oh, that last little line is brilliant. Even in the midst of absolutely life-threatening moment, Bilbo is ready to pull off a little pun.
The wordplay of
The wordplay, I should
better
say.
than I cook. Yeah.
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 If you just won't have me for supper. Great stuff. Let's get a little thing out of the way. We had a discussion about animate objects back when we talked about Gurthang in our epic Turin trilogy.
That's right.
And we mentioned this as one other example. We talked about Gurthang and the fact that Turin had, asked him, slay me swiftly.
Right.
And
Gurthang
responded.
Mm-hmm.
Things like, I'll drink thy blood quickly so that I may forget the blood of my master.
Beleg, yep.
And of what's his name, slain unjustly, Brandir. So Gurthang, responded with a knowledge of facts and a true sentience. And we talked about this object as being another, maybe possibly sentient object.
Example of a sentient object.
Yeah, but I think we reached the same conclusion then, and we'll discuss that real briefly here, is that this is just more like some sort of an enchanted purse. I mean, this is, I guess to put it in modern terms, a car alarm that's keyed to William's thumbprint. I mean, it's, anybody who grabs it that's not him is going to trigger the alarm.
Yeah.
And go ahead. I'm so sorry.
We truly do not know. Yeah.
No, we don't.
But it doesn't. There's no reason to believe that it's got any actual sentience like Gurthang.
No,
for sure.
No, I mean, if it went on to say, "Oh, were you a hobbit
I still
from
wonder,
the Shire?"
Right. Right. I still wonder who made it. I mean, can a troll get this kind of technology?
Technology. I don't know.
Maybe it did come from, maybe it also, along with the swords that they'll find later, maybe it also came out of Gondolin.
And yet the voice doesn't, I mean, it's
yeah, but after thousands of years, it's probably forgotten how to speak Elvish, and
that's true.
It's been
very
around trolls so
trollish
long.
in terms of language.
It's very trollish. I can actually imagine it. This person's been hanging out with trolls so long that it now speaks trollish.
It speaks troll. That's good stuff. So just kind of wanted to move along from that real quickly before we dug into the, kind of the meat of that, so to speak. Yeah. That might be a very bad choice of words.
The meat. I get it.
We do get a burrito hobbit. We get the burra hobbit line, which is brilliant. I love that. The not quite spilling out that he's a burglar.
Right.
Too bad he'd forgotten about not selling out his friends a little.
Not selling out his friends. Oh, yeah, there's tons of us.
I mean, no one, not at all.
He's probably thinking, there's others out there. Don't hurt me.
Right. But, they might hurt you. They might be able to come and rescue me.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure that's what he was thinking, but...
Except that Bert kind of made it clear what they were looking for when they wanted more.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, he's looking for a pie.
Maybe we can make a pie.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
Certainly an understandable kind of fight or flight response. Like, I've got friends. I've got big friends.
No, I'm sorry. Nobody. Yeah, no. None.
Yeah.
Brilliant grammatical wordplay, though, with that. I'll cook beautifully for you.
I cook better than I cook. Yeah, I know. That's great.
That's wonderful. That. Oh, my goodness. So, we get a little bit more of the trolls. They get into a fight because that's what trolls do. Mm-hmm. And we even find out that William has a last name. It's Huggins.
Huggins. He's the only one who has a last name, isn't he? That we know of. Bill Huggins.
Man. Bill Huggins.
Not Bill Stickers.
There's probably, no.
I bet that's probably why you pulled that fun fact, isn't it?
And Major Rodahead. Well, actually, no. I wish I could say that was exactly why I did, but
it works. It does work.
It does. The Bill thing absolutely works. There's probably some real life guy named Bill Huggins that Tolkien didn't like. Some like 6th grade bully or something. Gave him the name of a troll. But they do get into a big old nasty fight, which is a perfect time for Bilbo to sneak off. So what happens?
Oh, it would
because
have been,
if that's
absolutely,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That would have been the time for Bilbo to have left. But his poor little feet had been very squashed in Bert's big paw, and he had no breath in his body, and his head was going round. So there he lay for a while panting, just outside the circle of firelight. Right in the middle of the fight, up came Balin. The dwarves had heard noises from a distance, and after waiting for some time for Bilbo to come back, or to hoot like an owl, they started off one by one to creep towards the light as quietly as they could. No sooner did Tom see Balin come into the light than he gave an awful howl. Trolls simply detest the very sight of dwarves, uncooked. Bert and Bill stopped...
That's brilliant.
That's great, I love it. Bert and Bill stopped fighting immediately, and, "A sack, Tom, quick!" they said. Before Balin, who was wondering where in all this commotion Bilbo was, knew what was happening, a sack was over his head, and he was down. "There's more to come yet," said Tom, "or I'm mighty mistook. Lots and none at all it is," said he. "No burra hobbits, but lots of these here dwarves. That's about the shape of it."
Nice. Oh, good stuff. So Balin's just wandering up to the light. He doesn't have a sword ready or, even a bow and arrow or anything. He's just wandering along.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Balin. I love that he's the first one to come. I think that kind of speaks to what you mentioned earlier about Balin's trust or kind of faith in Bilbo. But yeah, look out. Trolls, they might not know what a hobbit is, let alone a burrow hobbit, but they sure know what dwarves are.
But they know what a dwarf is, and they do not like to see them raw.
No.
Raw and unbutchered.
Raw and wriggling. That is one of my favorite parentheticals in this whole thing.
I know, uncooked.
They detest the very sight of dwarves. Uncooked.
Of course. Otherwise they're perfectly fine seeing them,
sauteed on a plate.
Delicious. Please.
More
dwarves, please.
I'm sure there's like a, Sizzler all-you-can-eat dwarves thing for trolls.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Terrible quality, but, and all you can eat.
Just pure bulk.
Right, exactly.
Just quantity over quality.
It's not even USDA choice. This is like, we're talking, select or something.
Yeah, this is like grade.
Like barely fit for human consumption stuff.
Yeah, yeah. barely fit for troll consumption, which is saying something.
Filled with parasites, apparently, if we
yeah.
believe Peter Jackson.
The crunchy bits.
The crunchy bits. Okay, so my goodness, this is getting great stuff. So all the dwarves get captured, and let's see, they're
and as you said again, they don't have any weapons.
No, they don't have any weapons. One at a time they come, and then
Thorin had to grab a stick.
Thorin grabs a stick. He finally figures out there's a problem, and Bilbo even tells him what the problem is. It's trolls, but by that point, it was too late. So Thorin comes out, and he's fighting. He gets some damage in, which was awesome, but he
does, yeah.
It was not going to last. 1 on 3.
I love that. I love that moment.
I do.
It reminds me a little bit. It's a little bit of a Greek mythology moment.
Yeah,
you're
right.
Odysseus stabbing the Cyclops in the eye with the flaming stick.
Wow, I had not caught that. That's brilliant.
There's a little bit of that there.
I love the fact that you can remember most of your classical stuff. See, I can't until somebody reminds me of it. But that was well done.
Spent many years reading those works in college.
Those are good years. Those are good years.
Mm-hmm.
And I admire Thorin. He's here not so much to rescue Bilbo now at this point as he is to rescue his friends.
Right.
But he does get into the problem is 3 on 1 when the 3 are trolls, you're going to lose that battle eventually.
You're going to lose that.
Does.
Yeah.
So they're now all in
even
bags.
armed with a burning stick.
Yeah, a burning stick. A sword might have been better. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you'd gotten his eye with the end of your sword instead of the end of a pokey stick with fire, it would have been even more damaging.
That would have done more damage.
Much more damaging.
Perhaps killed him.
Maybe. Yeah. Certainly probably put him out of the fight.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're now all tied up in bags, and the trolls have this wonderful conversation about how they should do it. And of course, we love this line because it goes all the way back to the Fellowship of the Ring, the film, when Bilbo's telling the kids about his adventure,
telling the story to the adorable little Hobbit children,
to the adorable little Jackson kids.
They're actually Jackson Walsh kids.
2 of them are the Jackson Walsh kids, and talking about whether they should roast them slowly or mince them fine and boil them, or just sit on them one by one and squash them into jelly. And what a line! And how he delivers that is brilliant.
Yeah.
But I love this because here we learn it was just then that Gandalf came back, but no one saw him. The trolls had just decided to roast the dwarves now and eat them later. That was Bert's idea, and after a lot of argument, they had all agreed to it. "No good roasting them now. It'd take all night," said a voice. Bert thought it was William's. "Don't start the argument all over again, Bill," he said, "or it will take all night." "Who's arguing?" said William, who thought it was Bert that had spoken. "You are," said Bert. "You're a liar," said William, and so the argument began all over again. In the end, they decided to mince them fine and boil them. So they got a great black pot, and they took out their knives. "No good boiling them. We ain't got no water, and it's a long way to the well and all," said a voice. Bert and William thought it was Tom's. "Shut up," said they, "or we'll never have done. And you can fetch the water yourself if you say any more." "Shut up yourself," said Tom, who thought it was William's voice. "Who's arguing but you, I'd like to know?" "You're a booby," said William. I swore to myself I would say that with a straight face and not laugh, and I didn't. Let me try that again, just because it's such fun to say. "You're a booby," said William. "Booby yourself," said Tom. And so the argument began all over again, and went on hotter than ever, until at last they decided to sit on the sacks one by one and squash them, and boil them next time. "Who shall we sit on first?" said the voice. "Better sit on the last fellow first," said Bert, whose eye had been damaged by Thorin. He thought Tom was talking. "Don't talk to yourself," said Tom. "But if you wants to sit on the last one, sit on him. Which is he?" "The one with the yellow stockings," said Bert. "Nonsense. The one with the grey stockings," said a voice like William's. "I made sure it was yellow," said Bert. "Yellow it was," said William. "Then what did you say it was grey for?" said Bert. "I never did. Tom said it." "That I never did," said Tom. "It was you." 2 to 1. So shut your mouth," said Bert. "Who are you a-talking to?" said William. "Now stop it," said Tom and Bert together. The night's getting on and dawn comes early. Let's get on with it. Dawn take you all and be stoned to you, said a voice that sounded like William's, but it wasn't. Gandalf to the rescue.
Gandalf to the rescue. I love that you don't know it's him until, until
I mean,
the
you
end.
kind of do
see
because
this,
you keep seeing
you kind
this
of
thing
do
about
because he says that
a
he's coming back,
voice.
but he never says exactly.
No.
He just says it's. He thought it was William's voice.
Yeah.
It sounded like,
You're like
like
who's
Tom's
causing
voice,
all
voice
this
like William's.
conflict? But
Yeah,
Gandalf does a really, really amazing job of
he does.
of using
and
the
his-
troll's own stupidity and fighting tendency to defeat them.
And his timing is perfect because every time they settle, every time they stop fighting, every time they simmer down,
Yep,
he
he
finds
triggers
something else
another
to get him, a new way to cook them, or
And
no,
it
it's the
doesn't
yellow
take
stockings,
much.
not the gray stockings. No, it doesn't take much at all. And he knows this. He just keeps
He
on
just plays them like a fiddle.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
All the way until the dawn comes, which is exactly what we needed to do. We'll get to that. You've got a whole sidebar on the nature of trolls, but
I do, yeah.
I love this cleverness of Gandalf. This is not Gandalf using his magic. This is Gandalf using his wisdom, his knowledge of the trolls,
knowledge of trolls and
nature, both physically in the sense that the dawn is going to kill them, but also their nature,
But also their personalities.
as character. Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
Exactly. Olson points out in the book, and again, these are things that I would have caught this. I would have caught this, but no. Olson had to write it in his book.
Olson did it first.
This is a principle that we see throughout the Silmarillion in terms of bad guys not being defeated by force, but being defeated by their own evil, by fighting and greed. We saw it with Feanor and with his sons, with Eöl, with Maiglin, and of course we'll see it a ton in Lord of the Rings with Sauron and Saruman and even Gollum.
You're absolutely right.
They're not defeated by a massive army and some superhero coming along and chopping her head off. I mean, really, only Eowyn fits that mold, right? She takes out a bad guy with force, but all the others are kind of defeated by themselves.
Their greatest enemy is themselves, their own greed,
Absolutely.
their own wickedness, their own belligerence, their own inability to
belligerence, that's a
agree
good
on
word.
something. When we talk about Tolkien's world, so much about unity and people coming together and being better together. The trolls just keep arguing. They can't get together.
They do it. It's brilliant, and I absolutely love it. And that may have been the most fun I've ever had trying to read characters. Oh man,
It was very
that was
well done.
fun. And I'll tell you, as much fun as I had doing that, I'm going to have the opposite of fun when we get to Gollum. But we'll worry about that in a few chapters.
Well, Gollum is actually going to hurt, I think.
Yeah, it will physically hurt me. I've got to come up with something. I can't just try to do an imitation
Do Andy
of Andy
Serkis.
Serkis.
No,
because
he did it too well.
He's perfect. I mean, he did that character so well. And if I try to imitate him,
And if I
I'm
recall
gonna wreck my
correctly, he had
voice.
some special juice that he had mixed
like
up.
lemon juice and honey sort of thing.
Yeah,
to keep
something
his
that
throat.
really helped his throat keep going.
You'd have to, as much as he abused it to do that role.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just a brilliant moment, and I love the detail in all of this in terms of all the ways they're going to cook them. All the it's just brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
But now we find out that sure enough, the birds start twittering in the branches. The light comes over the hill, and boom, they're dead. They're
trolls
stoned.
turn to stone.
And I love the narrator's comment. For trolls, as you probably know, must be underground before dawn, or they go back to the stuff of the mountains they're made of.
Yeah.
Speaking of the stuff of the mountains they're made of, talk to us about the nature of dwarves. You've got a sidebar that you really kind of dug into on this.
Yeah, the nature of trolls. Yeah, it's something that's worth looking into. And
definitely.
As you probably know, they do turn to stone. And why?
Yeah.
You start to wonder, well, why do they turn to stone? The answer actually is first hinted at by Treebeard in Lord of the Rings. There's actually a passage it's in Book 3, Chapter 4, when Treebeard is talking to Merry and Pippin.
Okay.
And he says, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to do a Treebeard voice because I haven't prepared one.
Okay.
But he says, maybe you have heard of trolls? They are mighty strong, but trolls are only counterfeits, made by the enemy in the great darkness, in mockery of Ents, as orcs were of elves. So Treebeard is drawing a direct analogy between trolls and Ents and orcs and elves. Trolls being a mockery of Ents in the way that orcs were a mockery of elves.
Ooh.
And although, we don't know the details, we've talked a bit about orcs coming from elves. We don't know the details, but we do know that they were, in some sense, bred from elves. So it seems as though trolls were somehow bred from Ents. How Morgoth accomplished that, I have no idea, and I don't really want to think about it. But
maybe that's where the Entwives went.
Maybe. Oh, wow.
What a terrible fate that would be.
Yeah, that is actually a really
I don't know.
gruesome thought.
It is. I don't know. I wonder if he's just drawing analogy in the sense of the mockery thing, that trolls were made to mock Ents as orcs were made to mock elves, but that the creation was different. I get that only. I think that only possibly because of this line in The Hobbit that trolls must be underground before dawn, or they go back to the stuff of the mountains they are made of.
Yeah.
So they're
and that suggests that they were actually made from mountains,
like animate rock, right?
Well, and that's where it really gets interesting, because Tolkien really kind of goes. He has a bunch of different possibilities that he brings up, and he does point out that in one of his letters, which I'll get to in a minute, that's actually he's not necessarily sure that Treebeard is right when Treebeard says that.
I love that. I love that. How he could, even though he gave the words to Treebeard,
right?
He could go back and say, I'm not sure Treebeard was right on this.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
I love it.
It's so awesome. Taking it a little bit further, there's actually a little bit more in Lord of the Rings in Appendix F.
Okay.
There's a passage where Tolkien says, "In their beginning, far back in the twilight of the elder days, these," talking of trolls again, "were creatures of dull and lumpish nature, and had no more language than beasts. But Sauron had made use of them, teaching them what little they could learn, and increasing their wits with wickedness. Trolls, therefore, took such language as they could master from the orcs, and in the Westlands the stone trolls, which these would be, spoke a debased form of the common speech." And obviously that's what we see here.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me about that is, that sounds a little bit like how the elves taught the Ents to speak.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They woke them up and taught them to speak. So that kind of suggests that maybe trolls were already alive. Maybe they were just some sort of stone creatures, some sort of stone beasts. And so the mockery there could be Sauron waking up these stone creatures and sort of making them more sentient in the way that elves woke up the Ents. That could be the mockery there, as opposed to actually breeding them. So yeah, you're right. There are a couple of different options.
That could be. That's interesting.
Tolkien also, in that same appendix, I don't have to go into it, but Tolkien does say that there is potentially a difference between the really evil trolls that you see, like fighting at the Black Gate, like the Olog High, the ones that you see, Peter Jackson's vision, they're really the armored trolls,
the ones
and things
that
like
burst through the gate at Minas Tirith.
The gate at Minas Tirith, yeah, those really evil ones, and these stone trolls. There's a possibility that they could have even come from different strains. He really wasn't sure.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think the last word I want to say about it is from one of his letters, and this is what I was alluding to a moment ago. In letter 153 to Peter Hastings, and this is the Catholic bookshop owner, so there's a lot of really good philosophical stuff in that. Yeah, in that letter, Tolkien says, "Treebeard does not say that the Dark Lord created trolls and orcs. He says he made them in counterfeit of certain creatures pre-existing. Treebeard is a character in my story, not me. And though he has a great memory and some earthly wisdom, he is not one of the wise. And there is quite a lot he does not know or understand." Again, speaking of him like he's a, he's a real person.
Like he exists, first of all, and that he's not me.
Yeah. Going on, Tolkien said, "I am not sure about trolls. I think they are mere counterfeits, and hence, though here I am, of course, only using elements of old barbarous myth-making that had no aware metaphysic, they return to mere stone images when not in the dark. But there are other sorts of trolls besides these rather ridiculous, if brutal, stone trolls, for which other origins are suggested."
Other origins. Okay.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah. He's kind of implying that maybe the reason these trolls turn to stone is because they're not really alive in some sense. They're counterfeits of life,
almost animate. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder
they're
because
barely more than beasts taught to speak.
Barely more than beast. The reason that really speaks to me is something that I'd come up with after doing just a little bit of research. Was these trolls came from the Ettenmoors. Mm-hmm. Now the name Ettenmoors consists of two Old English words. Mm-hmm. Well, one Old English word and one that's a modern English word, moor, which is a high barren land. But Etten is derived from Old English Eoten, which is giant or troll. So I wonder maybe, we talk about the stone giants in a little bit. You wonder if they're related. that maybe the stone giants are somehow related to these stone trolls. I don't know.
You could take that, honestly, you could take that another step further and wonder whether Eoten is related to the Old English word ent, which also means giant.
Yes, exactly.
Because I know that, there's some similar letters there.
There are.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That they could all be connected. Well, I know when we get to the stone giants in Chapter 4, I think we'll want to spend some more time looking into them.
We definitely will. We definitely want to. For now, though, we're gonna talk about what happens after the three trolls become statues that Frodo will see in Fellowship of the Ring. Gandalf comes out, and everybody starts to figure out, oh, yeah, he was the one. Well, Bilbo, the only one who needs to figure it out, was the one who had kept them fighting until sunrise. So now they get the dwarves out of their bags, which really could not have been comfortable.
No, it couldn't have been. The stinky troll sacks.
Seriously, and worrying about when are they going to get squashed and
just hearing
chopped up finally.
They had not at all enjoyed lying there listening to how they're going to be roasted or squashed or minced.
It's kind of like that Twilight Zone episode, How to Serve Man.
How to serve to serve man, right?
To serve man, that's what it was. To serve man. Man, that episode trips me out every time.
Yep.
Twilight Zone. That's a show that some of you might not have ever seen.
Great show.
If you haven't, folks, seriously, go Google Twilight Zone and William Shatner and watch that one for a scare.
So was it?
Yeah,
Nightmare,
on the airplane.
Was it Nightmare at 30,000 feet?
I don't. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That may not be the exact title, but it's the.
No, but that sure is the thought.
There's a man on the wing of this plane.
Oh, great show! Great show.
Oh, I love that.
On a plane at 35,000 feet. Yeah. I can just hear Rod Serling now smoking his cigarette as he's telling us about this scene. Yeah. There's something you don't see on TV anymore.
A man just standing there smoking a cigarette constantly.
Standing there smoking a cigarette,
Consider if you will.
All right.
An ordinary man.
Consider if you will. That's right.
An ordinary troll arguing with two other trolls until the sun comes up. Find out what happens when these trolls get a one-way trip to the Twilight Zone.
In the Twilight Zone. So, of course, the first thing that any of the dwarves say to
I'm
Bilbo...
so sorry. Let's please continue.
No, don't be. I love the Twilight Zone. That's such a great show.
Me too. It's great.
The first thing a dwarf says to him is basically, you idiot. What in the world? We just wanted...
Why did you do that?
Yeah. I mean, after they hear him tell what happened...
Although, to be fair, fire and food were the things you would not have gotten.
Yeah, you weren't going to get
that.
As
if he had not tried to pick Bill's pocket. Like, he could have just said,
like
hey,
they were going to be able to get up and sneak up. And,
do you mind if me and 13 of my buddies come get down on some of this mutton?
We got to chow down on this stuff. But Gandalf does remind them, hey, look, there were trolls, and you know what that means, right? There's a cave somewhere, and maybe there's some food there if we're lucky. So then tell us, you've got a fairly lengthy section here that's worth looking at.
Yeah, I do. They followed the tracks up the hill until, hidden by bushes, they came on a big door of stone leading to a cave. But they could not open it, not though they all pushed while Gandalf tried various incantations.
Okay, wait a minute. I got to interrupt there. I'm sorry. It's kind of just like Moria again, right?
Yeah, it totally is.
What good is a wizard if you can't open the door?
Gandalf really does not have a good track record with door opening spells. It has to be said.
Melon.
Yeah.
This one didn't open to that one.
Yeah. No.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
I'll break it open with your head, Bilbo Baggins.
Well, Bilbo to the rescue this time, at least. He says...
Yeah, seriously.
He says, would this be any good? Asked Bilbo, when they were getting tired and angry. I found it on the ground where the trolls had their fight. He held out a largish key, though no doubt William had thought it very small and secret. It must have fallen out of his pocket, very luckily, before he was turned to stone. Why on earth didn't you mention it before? They cried. Gandalf grabbed it and fitted it into the keyhole. Then the stone door swung back with one big push, and they all went inside. There were bones on the floor, and a nasty smell was in the air. But there was a good deal of food jumbled carelessly on shelves and on the ground, among an untidy litter of plunder, of all sorts, from brass buttons to pots full of gold coins standing in a corner. There were lots of clothes, too, hanging on the walls. Too small for trolls. I am afraid they belonged to victims. And among them were several swords of various makes, shapes, and sizes. Two caught their eyes particularly, because of their beautiful scabbards and jeweled hilts. Gandalf and Thorin each took one of these, and Bilbo took a knife in a leather sheath. It would have made only a tiny pocket knife for a troll, but it was as good as a short sword for the hobbit. "These look like good blades," said the wizard, half drawing them and looking at them curiously. "They were not made by any troll, nor by any smith among men in these parts and days. But when we can read the runes on them, we shall know more about them."
Okay. Well, first of all, except for the pots of gold, that reminded me very much of my dorm room as a freshman in college.
Bones on the floor.
Just about.
I hope
the
they were
nasty
chicken
smell
bones or something.
Yeah, and the nasty
A
smell
nasty
in the
smell
air.
in the
My
air. Yeah, that's
roommates.
par for the course.
The good deal of food jumbled carelessly on the shelves.
Untidy
Lots
litter
of clothes
plunder,
hanging on the walls. No swords either, actually. But really, that was pretty close.
Man, that's funny.
There's so much here.
There's
more
a
than
lot.
you might think. But I think the biggest moment that really speaks to the kind of the big themes of the book is that it must have fallen out of his pocket very luckily.
Yep.
Before he was turned to stone.
Yeah.
Realize how important, how absolutely unlikely, and yet essential this moment is. Mm-hmm. The fact that he has that key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, think about the consequences if they never find Glamdring or Kristen Sting.
Right.
This is huge. Absolutely huge. Bilbo's
really
luck,
is, yeah.
because Bilbo's the one who found it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we have to
Absolutely.
believe that if the trolls had turned to stone and the key had not fallen out of his pocket.
Oh, yeah. Because their clothes turned to
key
stone,
would have
the
just
purse.
been yeah, exactly. The key would have just been
all of it.
a stone lump in his pocket.
Which you couldn't have gotten to.
Right.
Even if you could, it would have been stone.
Right.
You wouldn't have been able to,
To get it out, yeah.
I love, though, that it's very small and secret. Somebody told him to keep it secret.
Keep it safe.
So, he did.
Yeah.
Must have fallen out of the purse. Yeah, who are you? Oh, I'm stoned.
See, he should have had
Anyway.
the car alarm purse and the key on a ring together.
Mm-hmm. Kind of what I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. But, he's a troll.
Yeah,
not exactly
not very
bright.
smart.
What did I love? How did the narrator put it? They're a little slow on the uptake.
A little slow on the uptake, yeah. And they don't like things that are new or
new things. Yeah. That was really, I love that phrase. I will find that again.
Yeah.
Trolls are slow in the uptake and mighty suspicious about anything new to them.
Yeah, it's great.
I know some people like that. But none of you, listeners. None of you, dear listeners. I wasn't referring to any of you, just to make sure.
He was
you're
probably
aware.
talking about me.
No. Only a little.
No, the truth is actually every time I am slow on the uptake with something, I always think of that passage. I know,
I do too.
I want to use that one on Facebook more often. Like, I'm a bit slow on the uptake.
A little slow on the uptake and a bit suspicious about anything new to me. Gandalf's line, what do you make of this? That they were not made by any troll. Well, duh.
Yeah,
nor by any smith among men in these parts and days.
Yeah.
But when we can read the runes on them, we shall know more about them.
Yeah. I think
Good
it's interesting
stuff.
that he makes no attempt to read the runes. And
Yeah, that's the first thing I was thinking.
and I want to talk about that again next episode when we find out about the history of the swords. But I think it's worth noting here
it's
that
true.
he knows that they're not made by a troll, and he says, by any smith among men in these parts and days. I think, that tells us he knows more about these swords than he's
He
letting
knows something.
on. Yeah,
Yeah.
he definitely knows
He's
something.
aware of at least the, if not the specific identity of these swords, he certainly has an idea that these are, pre-third age.
Yeah, and kind of spoiling next episode a little bit. People do occasionally
Sure, a
ask,
little
why can't Gandalf read the runes? Well, we'll talk about this next episode more. But he doesn't say he can't read the runes. He just says when we can read the runes.
Right.
They're in a troll cave right now.
Right.
Forgive
exactly.
him for not taking the time to stop and decipher runes.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It reeks.
Yeah.
We got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So basically, is what Feely
And Feely
says.
is the one who cautions or who warns them. Let's get out of it.
Yeah, this is a bad place to be.
But
so they do find some food.
We'll definitely talk more about that next episode.
Yeah, I think we have a question in the bag.
We do
on that. I don't know if we get to that tonight or
we'll get to it in the next episode. I've already got it lined up.
So they do get some food. They have bread and cheese and ale and bacon. Man, that's just there. You go.
That sounds great.
You got bacon. That's all you
That's
need,
breakfast
right?
for me.
What was
Except
that
for the
Beatles
ale.
song? Bacon is all you need. Bacon is all you need.
Yeah, that was a
No, wait,
little
that's not how
known
it goes.
Beatles song.
It was a B-side of the album there. I mean, really, bacon is all I need. So, let's see. So what do they do? So they bury the treasure. Now, this is interesting. What do you make of this? The dwarves putting a great many spells over over the treasure.
That is very interesting to me.
Dwarves have access to spells.
Yeah, or Gandalf. I don't know.
That's true. Gandalf could have put them. Yeah, it doesn't. It just
But it is interesting that you don't usually see Tolkien talk much about spells in the Legendarium. And we've talked before about how Gandalf is not that kind of wizard, you know.
Right.
But yeah, apparently they had access to something.
You wonder. I mean, they may not have been functional spells. I mean, it might have been no more effective than just an ordinary hex, right? I mean, if some, a quote unquote witch, puts a hex on you and it has no power, unless you believe there's power. The same with this. This might be the dwarves
Just
put a spell on it.
It's not real. They just, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, they don't know that it's not real. They think it's real.
I don't know. I don't know.
No.
I'm not
You know
sure
what?
about that. But...
Hold on. It just reminded me of something. Okay, going back to the Far Over the Misty Mountains Cold, the second stanza. The dwarves of yore made mighty spells, while hammers fell like ringing bells.
So dwarves must have some spells.
Yeah, something.
So it could just be something that, maybe something in dwarvish belief, Yeah. Maybe words of good luck, words of good omen, something like that,
Something along those lines. So
or it
Thorne,
could be
of course,
actual magic.
asked
We
the
just
obvious.
don't know.
You're right. It could be. That's something I think we'll probably go and touch on in our
We'll
postscript.
try. I don't know that we'll find an answer.
Yeah, we'll take a look into spells because I know there's got to be a linguistic issue.
Well, yeah, I mean, a spell just means something you speak,
Right.
Just
That's
something
exactly
you
right.
utter.
I mean, yeah. So I'm sure that we'll. That's why they talk about like spells being on swords and things like that, and on weapons. And it's not necessarily that it means
Not
there's
necessarily a
some sort of
magic
magical
spell. That's a good
enchantment.
point.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe
Something
that's
to
what
look
we got
into.
here. Thorne asks him the obvious question: where did you go? And Gandalf, I love this. He's so Gandalf, really. I mean, that's I know that's not an adjective, but it works here. He says, to look ahead, and what brought you back?
Looking behind.
He does tell him, he does spell it out for him. He says, look, I went on out to spy out where we're going, to find out where we're going next. I was worried about our stock of provisions. Ended up encountering some of my friends from Rivendell. Now, totally unlike the movie, Thorne doesn't be like, well, we're not going there. Nothing about that.
Yeah.
There's no hatred of that's the one thing I remember thinking in the first one. Like, Thorin's all suspicious of Gandalf. I'd almost rather face the orcs than go to the
Right.
Rivendell.
Well, they really
wow.
played up the elf dwarf,
They did,
animosity.
and I get
there.
that. It's cinematic, but so now this is interesting. There's a little reveal in here. They were hurrying along for fear of the trolls. The elves feared the trolls.
Oh, that's a good catch.
These are really seriously nasty critters.
Yeah, that's true.
So they weren't taking them lightly.
That's
the ones
a
who
really
warned
good
them.
point. That shows that these were serious foes. Don't
This is a danger.
don't be fooled by the fact that this was just Bilbo and these 13 kind of hapless dwarves that were
right. Even the elves are afraid.
Even
of
the
them.
elves are afraid of them. Yeah, that's a really good catch.
Yeah. So that's the end of the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you have on this before we move on to everything else?
No, I think that's it.
I don't think so. I'm trying to remember. We
that's
do
all
know
I've
that.
got.
Yeah, I think you're right. Oh, we did get the word larder, didn't we? Yeah, they'd gotten food from the trolls' larder. So I think we've talked a little bit about that
Talked
phrase.
a little bit
We'll
about
see it
larders
again.
last time, didn't we?
Yeah, and I think we'll see it again too. So good stuff.
I wonder if
that
they
was
had
a
a
great
thrall.
discussion. I love that. That was good stuff.
Awesome.
Great, absolutely. And I love that chapter. One of my favorite ones in the whole book, and I really enjoyed going through that with you, Sean. So, folks, be sure to join us again next week. Thanks to our Patreon family, we are now releasing these episodes every single week, which will probably kill us, but we'll try.
That's right. But this one was a lot of fun. So if they're all as fun as this, it's going to be easy. But tune
it is
in
The
next
Hobbit.
time, 1 week from today, to hear all about the Tra-la-la-lally elves and the fine print on Thor's map, or on Thorin's map, or Thor's map. Either way.
Or it is, Thor's
Either way.
late of Thror.
The map.
The map of Thror and Thorin.
Yes.
Now, before we see what Bartleman has for us, I want to ask you folks, if you believe we've earned your support here at the Prancing Pony Podcast, we'd ask you to please consider joining our Patreon family at patreon.com/prancingponypod. It's thanks to our Patreon family that we're able to make this move to weekly episodes, but we do have another goal to reach, and some really cool rewards, too, like exclusive content and some really cool swag.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the bits of exclusive content that our patrons receive is a 5 to 10 minute postscript to each episode. You've heard us allude.
Five might be an
we haven't gone
Maybe
5
we should
yet.
say 10 to 15.
We've gone 10 to 15 on most of them. But what that is basically, since we record these episodes in advance, we get a chance to listen to the episodes before they release. And so we see if there's any jokes we missed out on or any topics we want to explore more, like this
like the spell,
question of
Dwarven spells. Yeah. So we end up recording a special Patreon exclusive postscript that releases the same day as the episode that it follows. So if you want access to those bonuses, be sure to join the Fellowship of the Podcast. And we also want to take a moment to thank those of you who've already joined. You're helping to make this show even better, and we're grateful. And we especially want to thank and give a very special shout out to Maya in Michigan and Jason in British Columbia. They are our patrons at the Kierdan's contribution tier. So if you want a personalized shout out on our show, now you know where to go.
And look, while your support is greatly appreciated, we do not want you to feel obligated. Only if you can afford it and if you think we've earned it do we want you to consider signing up. Otherwise, keep enjoying the podcast because we'll keep making it. Now, this is the point where we usually tell you about the survey for our podcast hope that we need your help with. But we have some very good news. We've actually received enough completed surveys to stop bugging you guys. In fact,
yes, we have.
We received the list of email addresses from our podcast host earlier this week, and we conducted the drawing earlier this month, I should say, and conducted the drawing earlier this month. So we have our winners. Alan?
That's right. We do. Our first winner is Melanie T. from San Francisco, California. She won a copy of the first edition facsimile of The Hobbit. She expressed her surprise at encountering this sort of chance, if chance it be, she said. Kudos
Very
to her
nicely
for that.
done.
Our second winner, who received a copy of Baird and Luthien, is Trevor D. from San Diego, California. And no, I did not choose two fellow Californians on purpose. I don't know what the odds are of that. I'd have to do the math, and I'm not good at math anymore. But I do want to give an honorable mention, if I may. You might recall that we said this drawing was only for U.S. residents because of shipping costs. It's hard to tell where someone's from by their email address, as our initial winner found out the hard way. A special shout-out then to Ruben V. from the UK, for he gave it up in the end of his own accord. An important point, as Gandalf might say. In this case, Ruben's loss is Trevor's gain. So, Sean, do we have any questions in Bartleman's bag this time around?
Well, first of all, thank you, Ruben, and congratulations to Melanie and Trevor.
Yes.
And to answer your question, Alan, yes, we do. I think we have time for two.
I think we do.
The first one we have here is from Maya in Michigan, one of our Priority Access patrons. And Maya wrote in asking, did the Dunedain in Middle-earth, during the time of the mid to late Third Age, still use the Adunaic language amongst themselves? An interesting question, and I think I have an answer for you, Maya. The answer is both yes and no.
Never go
not
to Sean
the podcast
for counsel. Go not to
the real life Lord of the Mark for linguistic counsel, for he will say both yes and no. The truth is that Appendix F says, in the Second Age, the Adunaic of Numenor, so this is in the Second Age, the Adunaic of Numenor was spoken in the forts and havens that the Numenorians maintained upon the coast of Middle-earth, and mingled with many words of the languages of lesser men, it became a common speech that spread thence along the coasts among all that had dealings with Westerness. Basically, what that means is that Adunaic actually became Westron.
I see.
In fact,
the common speech that spread along the coast. Right.
The Westron word for Westron is Aduni. And clearly, you can hear the similarity between Aduni and Adunaic. It really was the same language. It's just the language had changed. It's really much the same thing as what happened with English. Old English of 1,000 years ago. Changed over 1,000 years of, basically intermingling with other languages and, vocabulary trading and things like that, changed into the English we speak today.
bringing in stuff from other languages,
right, from
like French
Latin
and the
and
Romance
French
languages.
and Greek and things like that. It's still English, but it's very different 1,000 years later.
Oh.
And of course, Tolkien knew
people
that.
who spoke Old English wouldn't understand.
Look at Beowulf. Go read Beowulf, or listen to Miranda Otto singing the Old English dirge in Peter Jackson's Two Towers.
He's still my beating heart.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's very different, but it is still English. That's basically what's going on with Adonaic and Westron.
That's a good answer.
And remember that within the framework of the whole conceit that Tolkien's translating all this stuff, right? Remember the Red Book of Westmarch. The language that the Red Book of Westmarch was written in was Westron. And so every time characters speak English to each other in the book that we're reading, they're actually speaking Westron to each other in the Red Book of Westmarch. So
of course,
to answer Maya's question, everybody was speaking it all the time, but there's really no reason to believe that the Dunedain would have been using an archaic form of it amongst themselves. I think they would not have, because that language really had changed into the language.
I'm
that
sure
we
a
know.
few words probably, but yeah.
Yeah, could be. And I think maybe we might even get a little bit of that with with some of the archaic registers that we see in some dialogue in Lord of the Rings. But
sure.
But on the whole, no, I don't think anybody was speaking Adonaic. I think they were all speaking Westron.
Right, which is the descendant of Adonaic.
Right.
Very cool. Good stuff. Thanks, Maya. Great question.
Yeah, thank you for that one, Maya. I always enjoy a chance to dig into the linguistics. The second question we have comes from another listener, Jeff, in New York. And Jeff asks about the first chapter of The Hobbit. He says, "We learn in the first chapter that the old Took was Gandalf's friend, that Gandalf gave him magic diamond studs as a gift, and for years has been returning to the Shire and was known for telling wonderful tales at parties and brought fireworks and all that. But we also learn from Bilbo that Gandalf is allegedly responsible for so many quiet lads and lasses going off into the blue for mad adventures, from climbing trees to visiting elves, or sailing in ships, sailing to other shores, and that he used to upset things badly." Now Jeff goes on to say, "I don't read too much into this in The Hobbit as more than just some fun stage setting when you think of the book as a standalone tale." But he says, but when you contextualize The Hobbit as part of the legendarium, as Tolkien eventually did, and place it in the terms of this larger saga, what do we make of this? Is Bilbo really just the penultimate Hobbit, the second to last Hobbit to be pushed out of his door and into a great adventure after a long line of such hobbits? So I think what he's saying is, when Bilbo talks about all these stories he's heard of Gandalf, are all these stories true? Has Gandalf really been taking hobbits away from their comfortable homes for generations and taking them on adventures? And it's a really good question, although I'm afraid to say, Jeff, your guess is as good as ours.
Well, that was fast. Next question. Yeah, somehow I'm fairly sure my loquacious co-host isn't going to let it go that easily, are you, Mike?
No, of course I'm not. No, of course not, Jeff. No, I actually did look into it. I looked everywhere I can think of, and there's really not a whole lot that's definitive. The only evidence I can offer either way is this. In the first edition, which I can check both in Anderson's Annotated Hobbit and also in the first edition facsimile, in the first edition, the text reads, "Not the Gandalf who was responsible for so many quiet lads and lasses going off into the blue for mad adventures, anything from climbing trees to stowing away aboard the ships that sail to the other side."
Oh, my goodness.
So,
oh, man.
You know what that sounds like?
Yeah.
When we can see that when he revised The Hobbit
Gandalf's a serial killer.
Right, exactly. You're going exactly where I'm going. Because when he revised The Hobbit to bring it into the legendarium, Tolkien didn't get rid of this reference to lads and lasses going off for adventures. He did get rid of the idea that they were going to the other side. Capital O, capital S, because that sounds like they're going to Valinor.
Yeah.
That sounds like they're sailing to Valinor uninvited, and we know what happens to people who go to Valinor uninvited.
Yes, we do.
So, I can't imagine that, I think Tolkien is probably looking at that and thinking, well, I can't have Gandalf sending hobbits to go join Ar-Pharazôn in his cave. So let me change that a little bit. But he leaves the adventures part untouched. So
he does.
I don't know. I mean, I know that's not conclusive, but it's an answer. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on it,
It's
Alan?
an answer. Well, I mean, it is darkly entertaining to imagine a bunch of rebellious, adventurous hobbits, mostly Tooks, I would imagine, waiting for the last battle in the Day of Doom in the Caves of the Forgotten, giving Ar-Pharazôn and his troops a hard time. But I don't think that's what's happening.
Asking for contractual language in the
exactly. I would like to
Band
know the
of the Valar.
particulars. if you really want me to help you with this.
Right.
It does sound, though, like Gandalf has been sending hobbits on various journeys for some time now. Again, probably mostly Tukes, if I had to
I
guess.
agree.
But, I kind of get the feeling that part of what Bilbo mentions here is almost like an urban legend in some way, that some of what Bilbo's talking about is exaggerated and the result of rumor mongering, which, frankly, is an apparent pastime of most hobbits.
So it's sort of my Uncle Otho read about it in an email he got from his cousin Blanco, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and they don't have a fact checker to do it right.
Could be.
So, interesting stuff. We won't know for sure, but it certainly is interesting to look at.
Yeah,
well,
good question, Jeff.
It really is. And folks, that does wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. As always, we thank you very much for joining us. Be sure to join us again next week when we visit Rivendell and the Last Homely House.
And we move from Burra Hobbit pies to my favorite singing elves.
Oh, your favorites.
My
folks,
favorites.
We want to encourage you all to read along and take notes in your own copy of The Hobbit. So please check out the official library tab on our website, theprancingponypodcast.com. We've got links to everything from inexpensive paperbacks to the really good stuff for your Tolkien collection.
And if you wouldn't mind heading over to iTunes for us and leaving a review, we'd really be grateful for that. Those reviews help us get more visibility in iTunes, and that translates to a bigger and more vibrant Tolkien community.
It absolutely does. And thanks to those of you who have, by the way. There's a ton of you. And I also want to just add to that, thank you for all the kind reviews we've gotten on our Facebook page as well. I'm stunned. It's... If I ever want to be humble, I can't read those. No, I'm just kidding. Seriously, it's embarrassing.
Have said some very, very nice things. Yes, it is.
We are grateful.
Yes, we
really
read
read every single one of them, and we are really quite thoroughly blushing when we're done.
Yes, we are.
Make sure you never miss an episode of the show. Subscribe to the Prancing Pony Podcast through iTunes or your favorite podcast app. You can find us in every podcast directory that I'm aware of. And check out the podcast app on iOS 11 as it supports our new season and episode tags.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff in there.
Yeah.
I'm just starting to learn the new app after updating my phone.
Yeah.
And we want to thank all those of you who have become part of our social media family. We set out to start a Tolkien conversation that everyone could join, which is why we have our online common room on Facebook at The Prancing Pony Podcast and on Twitter at Prancing Pony Pod.
That's on Facebook at The Prancing Pony Podcast, not on
Facebook
at
Facebook.
Prancing.
Man, I'm never going to live that one down.
No, I will not let you, man. Are you ever going to let me live down
Tentaquittle?
No, you're never going to let me live that down.
Not anytime soon.
Folks, one last thing as always, don't forget to send your questions, comments, or your recipes for Dwarvish jelly. So really, it's more like marmalade, right? I mean, all the pulp would still be in it.
Oh.
To
Too soon.
at theprancingponypodcast.com. That is our new email address, so be sure to take note. Barliman at theprancingponypodcast.com. And we'll try to get them into our next episode, maybe even make some of those recipes. Well, an hour and a half, a little bit more than that, is still far too short a time to spend amongst such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.